Gary and Elder Parminder, the question is, in understanding the line, Judas has fallen. Has Judas fallen or still in the is still after the cross?
Understanding the line of Christ. As we have been seeing that 11:9 is parallel with the cross. Just before the cross, Judas fell away. But what about us today? Has Judas gone? Or not yet?
So the question is about the line of Christ. You translate? And what waymarks we have in that history compared to our own. So, if you don't mind, I don't want to answer that question. So I want to lay out that line in some of the presentations. Because you said it as a matter of fact, and perhaps not everybody's aware of that relationship. You said it as a fact that November the 9th is the cross. But I don't think everybody may be aware of that. So I'd like to lay it out in a presentation, and then perhaps we could ask the question again if I haven't addressed it. Okay. Anyone else? Can we have a microphone here? Oh.
The question is that there has been a lot of division ever since in the independent ministry. From as there are a lot of who are here that are part of the independent ministry, and the question is asked for this separation: is it godly? Is it God's purpose that there is to be separation or a division along the way? That's the question on the floor.
We understand that the work of the everlasting gospel is to separate two classes of people. Are you translating? Or?
Sorry, can you just repeat again, Sister?
The work of the everlasting gospel separates two classes of people. So Jesus said that he came not to bring peace but a sword. He came to separate or cast asunder, divide asunder mother, daughter, and all those strong relationships. And that work is sounds very brutal. He also said that he came to bring peace. So with regard to one peace, we know that that's an internal peace that he came to give us. But externally we don't have peace. The work of the gospel divides because the prophetic message tests us. Having said that, Adventism has been plagued by many independent ministries for a long time. If we were to go back to the time of Christ, there were many messiahs. People were following a lot of small groups. Some of them were violent insurrectionists. Some were just the Essenes. They were more peaceful, but there were a lot of separated groups. Those separations were not according to the work of the everlasting gospel. Whenever you get a group together like that, you'll find there's always somebody that wants to play Pope. So not all separations are from God. Adventism has seen lots of independent groups because conservative Adventists haven't liked what they've seen going on in the mainstream church. But they haven't broken away because of a message. Personal differences or preferences. We understand that Daniel 2 is a separation of a stone from a mountain. There is only one stone, not many stones. And yet the mountain is made up of many stones. So it becomes of necessity that we understand what the message is that cuts that stone away from the mountain. In the hewing of that stone from the mountain, There has been a number of separations when people reject the increase of light that comes with the prophetic message. It's not for us to pick and choose what light that we like or goes along with our natural inclinations. We just have to trust and believe the light as it is, as it comes. So as Elder Tess has shown on the lines, we know that each major waymark is a testing time. Where the light given for that period is tested. We've just gone through a major test. But it's not the last one. There will be a further light that will come to us in this dispensation. It will challenge us if we haven't settled into the light that has come so far. We could struggle and fall away. And so God in His mercy has given us this time to settle into those truths. At the same time, we see light is starting to open up to us. While God sends the light, it's not according to His will that there be separation. But in His love for us, He's granted us freedom of will, freedom of choice. If we don't like what we see or hear, then we separate. While it's difficult to watch, it's just the natural result of the everlasting gospel. God worked long and hard with Judas. It was never His will that Judas leave. But it was once he did, that group just moved forward and went from light to light. So from an emotional perspective, it's a very sad thing. But God is raising an army. And it gets chipped, Gideon's army gets chipped away. And you don't want to go to war with the soldier next to you only half-hearted.
me senani se maka tau takitu na nona.
You're only as strong as the team you've got.
Era na kukonga era bukuni tili se na bukuni lala era tiko wataka.
Is that answered? Any further thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple. So Sister Terry gave a couple of stories.
Sister Terry pasa soletik sana we talanoa.
One of them was from Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 to 39.
Do may na mai was etili tito som kanto kin to som buka. Wa.
So we'll read that verse together. So Christ says in verse 34 that he hasn't come to send peace on the earth, but he's come to send a sword. Verse 35 says that he's come to set family members against one another. The son will be against his father, the daughter against her mother, the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Verse 36, a man's foes shall be they of his own household. Verse 37, he explains what this is relating to. Those who love their friends and families more than they love God, they're not worthy to be considered his children. This is the reason why there's this struggle going on in families and friendships. There's another passage in Luke chapter 12. It's similar. Verse 49 to 53. Luke 12, 49 to 53. Chapter 12, verses 49 to 53. We'll just read verse 53. The father shall be divided against the son against the father, the mother against the daughter against the mother. And it follows a similar pattern to the passage from Matthew. So the question that's being asked, is it necessary to have separations? So is God in these two passages, is he hoping for, is he looking for separation, for a division? So in Matthew chapter 10 verse 34, he said that he came to send a sword. He didn't come with peace. So we need to understand what that passage is saying. Is God explaining the consequences of his coming? Or is he explaining a prediction of what will happen when he sends his son.
Se magmadalo tiko ko ya na beka yala tako ko na ngor la mekin na lumen.
I understand it's the second answer.
Kosa bambota ni yak na nakaroon ni somitaro.
It's not his will that there should be separation. It's a consequence of a test that he brings. Sister Terry mentioned another passage. She's Judges chapter 7.
Sister Terry, Judges,
so in Judges chapter 7 verse 2, God said to Gideon, the people that are with you are too many. Says Israel will vaunt themselves or become proud and boastful that they have destroyed the Midianites. So God sends away 22,000 people. Then in verse 4, there's 10,000 people left. He says there's still too many. So he designs another test for them until you get to 300. Verse 7. So one of the reasons why there are these separations is because if there were too many people, we would think that we achieved the work in our own strength, not in God's. I'm going to go to two Spirit Prophecy quotes. One of them, they're both from early writings. The first one is page 240. 240.
Early writings, page 240.
The chapter title is called The Advent Movement Illustrated. It's an explanation or a version of the Millerite history that people sometimes are not familiar with. So we don't have time to read through all of this chapter. But if we were to read from the second paragraph, 240 paragraph 2,
240 paragraph 2,
it reads as follows. A glorious light then rested down upon these companies. And the purpose of this light was to enlighten or to bring light to anyone who would receive it. Some of those people who were in darkness received the light. Others resisted the light. And they said it would lead them astray. The light left them and they were in darkness. Those who received the light were very happy and joyful.
Era marau kara
and they cherished or they held on to the increase of this precious light.
era dingoma ka karona na virara maka lakomena tiningonongo.
They had joy and they looked towards heaven.
Era marau kara raiva ki kilomalangi ena elo ni marota.
And in connection with the first angel's message, they cried, "Fear God, give glory to him."
Kasi mati nararamong ki na mateni ngilosi na rerva kana kalo.
So there's this light that's coming down upon the people.
Iya, laki may nararamang behir na tamata.
Some receive it and some don't.
So elingoma ka so siya.
The ones that don't go into darkness.
Uirera sinilingoma era biu sera wakau ki na muto.
The ones that receive the light, they have an increase of light.
Uira kwa lingoma nararamong era bakalibuta ki na nararama behir.
Those in the light give the first angel's message.
Oira era tiko na rarama servera na tukutuku ni mateni angilos.
Then she says, when they raise this cry,
Kakaya nira bakatura na akali bakando nakali
first angel's message,
mateni angilosi.
she says, I saw the people that were in darkness pushing them and thrusting them.
Kakaya ni awarega ni reda na pana ni oira era tiko na muna buto era bilingira tani tiko ko era dingo tiko na rarama ni mateni angilos.
At this moment,
Yan ang unong
those people that were in darkness and those people that were in the light are joined together.
yan ang unong oira para dingo mo nararama sa oira tiko na nararama kaya tiko na muna buto era sa paksuko mo ni bata.
The imagery is that there's a rope that binds them all together.
Elorai ni dona kumukumu dona wa e wa bibingira bata kevitu.
She says, many who cherished the light broke the cords and stood and separated from these people.
E kaya ni lewebunga kwara asa separate kwa asa tawas tadi may nararama era
the people who were in darkness, they kept on saying, God is with us, we stand in the light, we have the truth. But they were actually in darkness. Give you one more passage. Early Writings, page 270. Got that?
Early Writings, page 270.
It starts on page 269. It's the chapter called The Shaking. So this is going to give you a similar experience, similar dynamic.
Quote.
But this is not the first angel's message, this is the history of the third angel. So the chapter title is The Shaking. It's all about people who are in light and people who are in darkness. Paragraph 2, page 270. She says, I asked the meaning of the shaking. She was told the shaking would be caused by a straight testimony, a message.
straight testimony.
And this message is the counsel to Laodicea.
Karena tugu-tugu mo ora makasal we Laodicea.
This message has an effect.
Dan tugu-tugu mo sera di baka.
Some people accept it,
So di goma.
and others rise up against it.
Kaso itu lagi ka sera di goma.
And it's be-
Kasagata.
It's because they rise up against this message, that's what causes the shaking in God's church. So, over and over again, we see this separation happening. Whether you go to Cain and Abel, or any of the stories that we've just spoken about, we see a separation occurring. Give you one more.
Example.
Last day events,
And the last day events.
page 195, paragraph 4.
Page 195 dari paper 205 paragraph 1.
Only those people who are living up to all the light that they have only those people will get more light. Unless we're daily growing, we will not recognize the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in the latter rain. It's going to be falling on people all around us, but we won't discern it and we won't receive it. So whilst it's not God's will, it's an inevitable consequence of bringing a test or a message. We spoke about this morning. So yesterday we spoke about this. About whether we have moral tests or prophetic tests. In this room, not everybody here is a faithful disciple. Unfortunately, that's the case. Is that God's will? No. He wants all to be saved. But not everybody wants to be saved. So if we all lined up, how would we be able to identify who are the faithful children here and who are the disobedient? We'd have to bring a message or a test. And that would identify who is faithful and who isn't. Sister Terry mentioned there have to be true and faithful tests. If they're not proper tests, it's just that two people would argue about some trivial point. If it's not a true test, people may separate,
tamata erna vitaw sei
but it's not in the context of the gospel.
kasangani ngangare ena muguni kosipeli.
In the context of the gospel, separation is inevitable.
Na vitaw sei ena kosipeli esangani rauninda taroba.
So I hope that answers the question. You got two answers. My sister had a question at the front here. Oh, my sister had a question at the front first, I think.
Immunization, but the immunization is a breaching on a missile.
The question is what is your view, or what do we mean to be immunized? Because there's been an outbreak of measles. Is it proper that we have to undergo immunization?
I think yesterday I mentioned some studies that were done in Canada earlier this year.
Kila ni nanoa au pakaresaka ni sonavuli anga kama inavano Canada.
Where information regarding two streams of information was given.
Ana buku ni kena wakandia taki ruana wasi ni information.
And more understanding was opened up on conspiracy theories.
Kalebu na itukutuku sena kila ka tikiubahararam takimai ana buku ni conspiracy se tukutuku bakailasu.
Again, I would encourage anybody who hasn't watched them to go back and watch the Canada presentations by Elder Tess.
Presentation my Canada.
But there's a lot more information out there than that's on those presentations. As my sister said, there's a disturbing outbreak of measles in certain parts of the world. And people are dying. And not necessarily from the measles, but they bring disease brings complications with it.
Complications.
I have two daughters. The eldest received all her immunizations, I think bar one. The youngest received no vaccinations. When I became an Adventist and then started rubbing shoulders with more conservative people in the Adventist church, I learnt of all the evils that were attached to vaccinations. The science now is teaching us, to be honest, the science has always been there to support vaccinations. But when you travel down one particular path of conservative Adventism,
Ia ni tatang bale e nandona ngoni sala ni ndona tamata ni lotu kavitu.
You only hear one lot of information.
E ndona rongo tikunga e ndona yase ni vamadala se ni tukutuku.
So after further investigation, just this past 12 months,
Ia ni oti na nongu bang dindike enam tirikarona mula sao tiongo
my youngest daughter, who's in her late 20s,
na lubengu ngone ko tipo enambaki rosongul vadava
has had the joy of going back and getting all those vaccinations done.
e sa marotaka mena listale mena le vakador na ve dula ke de kwasi ni vakador tu me bua na ve mbaki sauti.
We've learned that what those vaccinations do is create memory cells in the body.
Enda sabulira ni ve dulongo e kotamai na vakalebutaka na memory cells kinangoda.
So when the body comes into contact with certain pathogens or certain diseases,
ni ve sotabi na nondambula tambian sinangonda kina ve mate so
the immune system can jump into action quickly.
na no human system okoe e na valuta va kusa na ve mate ongo.
Now, I'm not a scientist,
Ia eu senga ni tamata vuli va dovandindike.
but I would encourage you to start looking more broader on the information out there on vaccinations.
Kau nanuma seu binakata mo barataka ni nandoro menda na vakandindike takayani na ve ka membaleta na
That can explain it much better than I ever could.
karauki na ni na vamadaltaka vakabinaksara na ve ka vamadaltaka nyongo.
And it's not just anti-vaccination,
Kasi nga wala nga ni no musangkata na vakasama se vanana ni lula
there are also other conspiracy theories attached to it.
ka tutal tunga na biba ka hubuli vakailasu e be wakani vatakaya.
One of the underlying principles attached to conspiracy theories,
Dua na
what they all have in common,
dona kai era be wakani vakatutu era toto vatakina o era na be vakahulengo
is they're based on fear.
ena buku ni wakaya mutakitu ena rere.
We fear the government, we fear hospitals, we fear people that are professional people.
En da rere vaka na matintu, da rere vaka na wale nimbola ke ira na be vakatutu professional people
Everybody's out to get us.
En da nanuma ni tamata keve ena
And what the Midnight Cry message has done
karena kada kama na midnight cry message
has taken away that fear.
e kotatani na rere ongo.
We have less to fear from the world than we think.
Kenda e levu na o kenda na lotu e levu na no rere vaka na vika tonda.
What we learnt this morning is we have more to fear from within.
Ia na kanda ulile ni kuwa na matagle ni kuwa that o kenda e levu dondon me na rere vaka na vika ilong.
So it's not for me to tell you what to do for your children.
Ka senga biao o yao senga biao mo na tuku na kama na kaver na luemu.
But I would encourage you to look widely and investigate widely.
Ka e o vaungi tike muni vaka rere sara vaka almatua.
Because if you see the studies and the information that's out there, you would feel more confident in the decision you make.
Niko na sarava na viki a presentation kwa satu na website o nage marata ko sia o nage vaka alongangata ke na vika kona vaka rama takikina.
You need to know that when you take your child into that doctor,
And dono mo kila ke vaka kota na luve mo kina bebu ni wai.
that you are doing the right thing
Nyo iko takavati ko na ka dondon.
based on the right information.
Ya butaki ena tukutuku don.
So I would encourage you to, one, if something is based on fear, then it requires further investigation.
Kauva ungiti kemuni kem kai dona ka erutaki ena yalo ni rere.
But on top of that, to understand how the measles virus works.
Kandondo menda vakila kataki na menda kila na vava se na veka na vani matengona misila.
Knowledge is a powerful tool.
Ni kila ka ongo endona erangi kokoa.
And fear uses suspect information.
Kana elo ni rere o koe kotamai na yalo leilai.
The question was, what was the original question?
The question was the immunization. Is it right for children to be taken to hospitals to be immunized because of this outbreak of measles?
And the measles outbreak has been in close islands, hasn't it? You've got it in Fiji as well.
Yeah, we have an outbreak.
You have outbreak of measles in this area. Then that's a yes. You want a short answer? I knew it was in Samoa. They've had a number of deaths, infant deaths in Samoa, but I didn't know you had it in Fiji.
Thank you.
Did you want to add to that?
Just for the information that the outbreak of measles was in the other province, neighboring province on the other side, not this one. Just for the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Still on that question. What about will healthy living? Will it help avoid them having our children affected with measles, or what's the movement stand on health for living?
Want to add to?
Especially on diet and strictly vegan diet.
I think a natural diet goes some way in helping us to live healthily.
Natural diet
But it doesn't prevent infectious diseases.
Exposed to the
I've not seen native populations be free from malaria, as an example, because of their healthy living.
Native
I think many of the diseases that are promulgated by mosquitoes, I don't think they're preventable by a healthy diet. I'm not saying all of those you can be vaccinated against. But again, a healthy diet can help to keep your immune system strong. But there are certain illnesses which I think you expose yourself to danger if you're not vaccinated against or immunized.
Kanundun kina mena kilani na veio longo e nundun mena vagata mena kina mena tani mekena na bukini vem mateso.
Again, everybody has to make a personal decision based upon their own circumstances.
Ka ngandre kina weekend na tama weekend na nundu mena na kama na dingi wakatotaki na bukuni nonda situation, circumstances. Aventa que nimbulo dalam dulu.
If I could just add to that, I think one of the hardest things from going from being an anti-vaccinator to believing in vaccinations is having to explain it to people that you've been telling over the years that you don't believe in vaccinations. We have to swallow our pride. And that's not so hard to do when you can give an intelligent answer for why you're doing it. And our children are worth the effort to investigate this further so we make the right decision.
Detalhe. There's a question. The question is, will Elton Jeff Pipinja inherit eternal life, since we have believed that he has been the first angel messenger? So the question was, will he be able to inherit eternal life?
Just looking for a quote. Can you hear us, or is it too... Yeah, please. Can everybody hear me? So I want to read from Second Selected Messages, page 104, paragraph 3.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi dalam website ko, USF 104 page 2.
The first and second messages were given in 1843 and 1844.
Namatay ni tuku-tuku kaya kami itu baso ni artikel terus mengkamar artikel bahasa mengkamar.
And we're now under the proclamation of the third message.
Kami saat itu tuku di Katolik dan University.
I'm going to go down a bit further.
Langsung saya
There cannot be a third without the first and the second. So there are three messages. The first and second were given in Millerite history up to 1844. They're now in the history of the third, and you cannot have the third without the first and the second. So that means we cannot give our message without understanding the Millerite history. So I'm going to read another passage. Early Writings, page 62.
Early Writings, page 62.
She says, not all who proclaim the first and second angels' messages are to give the third. Even after they fully embrace it. So, even if you proclaim the first and second angels' messages, that's Millerite history. That would make you part of the Millerite movement, a Millerite. It doesn't mean you're going to give the third angel's message. And she then goes on to say, even if you accept it. So you preach the first, you preach the second, and you accept the third. She uses the word embrace, which means you love the third angel. So you asked whether or not Elder Jeff can be saved. I think that was your question. So we've spoken about There are 3 messages.
Kada tukunan niya tolo na tugu-tugu.
You cannot have the third without the first and the second.
Kasi namin na isa na katolya tugu-tugu kaya kasi namatay ka na karua.
And now we're saying people who gave the first and the second cannot give the third.
Ka basa ngora katulin ni wera rasulah namatay ka na karua isa namin na rasulah na katolya tugu-tugu.
Even if they love the third.
Dinangani kalau mau na katolya tugu-tugu.
Now we know that the 3 angels' messages are in a sequence.
Yang dakila ni untuk ngaleto tugu-tugu leto dia ni losi era mai era benda tarari mai.
Just like the numbers 1, 2, 3, they follow in order.
Kangani dawi dua.
There's a passage, I haven't got it here, that says that the messages come in their order.
Itu na tingin boleh tigo ike itu pun ini na matay ka na katulong tugu-tugu lahat may makai tugu-tugu.
So you know that you have to go from the beginning to the end.
Kata kila nandun mo tigo may tigo may abang na magtagulo.
It's not sufficient just to give the first or the second message, you have to give the third.
Kasi wala nga ni todo ko musulia nga matay ka na karuan nandun ka nga musulia ni katulong.
I think sometimes we're not aware that the first angel's message says, fear God, for the hour of his judgment is come. The judgment in the first message is not the same as the judgment in the third. They're different judgments. So unless God gives you a commission, a specific work, for instance, John the Baptist, Malachi chapter 3, behold, I send my messenger to prepare the way. So unless you've got a specific job, you're required to give all messages. She's going to explain why these people aren't allowed to give the third message. She says it's because some have had so many errors and delusions, all they can do is save themselves. And they're not allowed to be a guide or a teacher for other people when it comes to the third message. If they try to be a guide or a teacher of the third message, they would destroy people. So just because someone raises up to give the first message doesn't mean they're qualified or fit to give the third. Especially if they hold on to error. And they had delusions or false ideas. The fanaticism runs so deep inside them they would try to do a work before God would help them or straighten them out. They would try to go ahead of God. They would mix truth with error. If you watch some of our recent presentations,
recently,
we've demonstrated that Elder Jeff preaches half right and half wrong. That's what it says here. They mix truth with error. And if God allowed them to continue to do that, the flock would become sick. And they'd eventually die. Give you one more passage. Great Controversy, page 608.
Great Controversy.
The chapter begins 5 pages before in 603. It's the Sunday law history. As the storm approaches, the storm is the plagues. As the plagues are seen ahead of you, in front of you, a large class who had professed faith or a belief in the third angel's message but they haven't been sanctified through obedience to the truth, obedience to the truth, they leave their position and join the ranks of the enemy. They hadn't been sanctified by the truth. They'd believed and taught errors. So when the time to give the third angel's message comes, they abandon their position. So a person who abandons their position is someone who is in rebellion to God. Now it's not for me to say if an individual person can be saved or not be saved. All we can speak about are these parables, these models. There are people who gave the first and second messages. They held on to errors. They wouldn't be allowed to give the third message. When the time comes to give that message, because they haven't loved the truth, they leave their position and they join the enemy. The enemy is the world. And the reason they join the world is because they think like the world. She says they have come to view matters in the same way that the world sees things. So whether or not anybody who fits this criteria can be saved, it's not for me to say. But not having the love of the truth, believing delusions or conspiracies, making the flock sick and killing them, abandoning your position because you love the world. We can see that these are crimes against God. None of us would want to be in that position. I can say in a general sense or a generic sense, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. I think it's for each of us to decide if we fit that criteria or that pattern. So I hope that helps to answer your question. Future for America and all those that follow them are in a perilous condition.
Future for America, Future for America, tutu saparlasi tu.
Will be the last question, if that's okay.
Parminder, please could you clarify about the relationships between Russia and the Ukraine? You've been mentioned earlier on your last presentation.
In my last presentation, I mentioned about the impeachment proceedings that are occurring in the United States at the moment.
Presentation impeachment
there's a lot of evidence that people interfered in the 2016 elections. If you hear the statement from the Democrats and the statement from the Republicans, they have a different story. So the Democrats believe that Russia interfered with the elections. They went onto online platforms and they created fake accounts. And they made statements that were against the Democrats.
Go against the Democrats.
So they manipulated the people of the United States. The Republicans, the White House, they have a different story. They say there was a conspiracy between the Democrats and the Ukrainians. In order to essentially say, give bad information or lies about Donald Trump. So that's the backdrop of the impeachment inquiry.
Kaya namin kaya tiba ang dakuli katumba ni impeachment.
Now, connected with that
Kasi matyo ya
is that one of Donald Trump's rivals, one of the people who wants to be the president,
kasi matyo ya ito ito na rival o Donald Trump sila na enemy. Donald Trump.
is one of his opponents who wants to fight against him.
Yeah.
His name is Biden, and a few months ago, earlier in the year, the United States, Donald Trump, bribed the Ukrainians
United States President American Donald Trump wagumi Ukraine.
So he said to the Ukrainian president, I will give you money if you help me.
President ni Ukraine ni nasolya ko na ilabo meron bibuki kina Ukraine ni America. Donald Trump kina.
On the surface,
and
what he asked the Ukrainian president to do was to investigate what happened in 2016. That the Ukrainians had done some corrupt work with the Democrats. He said, investigate that. But there's no evidence that anything happened. So people believe it to be a conspiracy. But what his intention seems to be is that he wants to make his opponent, Biden, look bad. Because Biden's son worked in Ukraine. His son worked in the Ukraine. You do on the whether or not he got that job through legitimate means or whether it was some corrupt way of getting that job is irrelevant. The reason why Donald Trump is under investigation is because in attacking Biden's son, he ends up attacking the father. And the father is one of the candidates to be the president. And it's against the law to ask another country to investigate one of your opponents. So that's what the backdrop of the impeachment inquiry is about. It's because it's against the law to ask another country to investigate one of your opponents.
na não opponent, não vis, ou qual nanduri against you, na mga election.
Does that help? Your microphone's not working. I can't hear it.
Would you mind if I have another question, please? Please, Brother Parminder, can you just give me a proof that Daniel 11:40 to 45 is in the baptismal vows?
This accusation, there's an accusation that Daniel 11 verse 40 to 45 are not in the baptismal vows. So this is some new idea that Future for America have started to speak about.
Na may pagkakalayan ko, alam ko ni, kaya tukunin ni Daniel at Kandua Basang Kalima, senang tipo, na Bela ni pertenso, quando stava schilo catechina, buona bebita che era tipo Future for America.
It's not a new question. I want us to think about this. Those vows were written nearly 4 years ago. And Elder Jeff Pippinger, he scrutinized those vows. And many other leaders in the movement did as well. He got baptized under those vows, and he baptized people under those vows. So ask yourself the question, why does he suddenly realize that those 6 verses are not in the vow? If he were really a shepherd of the flock, and he was supposed to be on guard, protecting the flock, he hasn't done a good job, has he? It's taken him 4 years to work out that the premier verses aren't in the vows. Why did he not object before? He will try to portray or give a story that he's just figured it out. If that were true, you'd be foolish to follow him, because he's not a very good shepherd to protect people. But of course that's not the truth, because he and I have spoken about this on a number of occasions. Because people have asked the question in the past. And both he and I were happy that all of those truths in those 6 verses can be found in those 26 vows. They're built into those vows. Now I want to mention one point, why they're not written in the vows. If I say to you, do you believe that Matthew chapter 1 verse 1 is the truth?
Kaya pawambota ni Malvin dua-dua endina.
What would you say?
Baba na tukuna.
Yes.
Iya.
Then I'd say you can get baptized now.
Orang itu tukuna saran yang baptisan ng mga.
Is that any evidence that you even understand what the verse teaches?
Endon din na bek na bandin endina ni ko understand ta kasi kilana na kaya tukuna tikuna na tigil wala tambongo.
Do I even know what you believe about the verse?
Eram bek biang mo kilana wambota na tigil wala tambongo.
So it would be foolish to have vow 27
ela buku ni vela latini baptizo ko erbo sono buka me tikuna me e kalielia me lentua na vow 27
that says, do you believe that Daniel 11 verse 40 to 45 is true?
Me tukuni tu bena vow 27 abambo tambeka ni tani ela tini kandua basala buka na ndina.
Because of course it's true. But what do you believe about those verses? Many people have a misconception of what those verses even mean. You go to verse 45. Turn there. It says, he shall enter into the glorious holy mountain. He shall plant his tabernacles, the tabernacle of his palaces, between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. So do you believe that's going to happen? How would you word a vow? What would you say in the vow? Would you say that you believe the verse? Would you give a detailed explanation and say, do you believe the verse? What would we say? The problem is that for many years, in fact, if you go to the Time of the End magazine, that deals with this verse, the explanation that's given in that booklet is wrong. I've highlighted this point for many years now. Because they change a word. It says, in the verse, it says, between the seas, in the glorious holy mountain. It says the word in. And because people can't believe a plain reading, a thus saith the Lord, they won't believe what they see, they change the word. If you go to the Time of the End magazine, it will say, and the glorious holy mountain. Because they already have an idea of what's going to happen, and they think the word in is wrong, so they change it. This is one of the problems why these verses were not put in the vows. We have 6 verses there. And this movement is 30 years old, as you know. And which verse are we in? We're still in verse 40. We're still in the first verse. We haven't even finished yet. So what confidence do we have that we understand all the other verses correctly? God's hand has been has controlled the writing of these vows. Because there are so many misconceptions of these verses,
baleta ninda sangani ninda
Wrong understanding of the verses
sangani linggo ama sini understand takara na bali ni tikini volta bongo.
if a person says, yes, I believe, what are they actually believing?
Yung kanya tamatambyan itu kuna avambota, avambek avambota, avambek kwa avambota.
Some people think verse 44
So tamate na numa ni wasini bola na tikina wasang kaba.
comes after verse 41.
Elako mai niwoti na verse 40 wasi tikina wasang kandua.
And it doesn't.
Kasema ya.
There's so many things people don't understand about these verses, it would have been dangerous to just put them down as a vow.
Levo na tamate sena tikini kila na relevati sena itubutuba ni tikini bola ni wasongo.
And to make a simple statement to say these verses are the last 6 verses of human history,
menta tupu na indo na tuku ni ngo na tikini bola ngo na taniala tikini kando basang ngul kira basang kalima sa tativi na bata tuni ngona.
everyone knows that they are.
Tamate kere kila ni dino ya.
It doesn't become a baptismal vow.
Kasi ando me tikini ni vela lati ni baptizo.
Even Adventist theologians who don't believe anything we teach know that this is talking about the end.
Pero matanga
Even Adventist theologians, university professors, who don't believe any of these truths as we understand them, they even know where to place these verses. Because it's just before Michael standing up. So these are some of the reasons why a vow wasn't written that says, do you believe in these 6 verses? Because people don't actually fully understand what all of these verses even mean. Plus the principles are in those vows. Plus Elder Jeff was aware of all of this a long time ago. And the only reason he's bringing it up now is to give a storyline that makes me look evil. He claims to be the leader of this movement. If what he's saying is true, he hasn't been a good leader. So what confidence can you have that he will be a good leader in the future? I would suggest we wait and see what vows they will write for themselves. Because I suspect they're going to take a lot of information out that's currently in those vows. One example more. These vows were written in 2016. The same year, the movement found raffia and panium.
Kaungo na mbaki e aloreki na nararama ni peni mbati ke Raffia.
Raffia and Panium are not in these vows either.
Raffia ki bela peni sa atung manga ni tiko bena na yamu ni bela lationgo.
Again, it was not thought appropriate to add those in because they can be covered when you study through the vows.
Ka ongo esa nakiti balak mekaku ni wiki na mbati ko erani akubuta na beyago ko tiko bena bela lati ni baptizo.
There was only one new major doctrine that came after the creation of these vows.
Donga na bakubuli levo kwa lakuma ni woti na kena vaka na bela lati ongo.
And that was vow number 12. That was added in later.
Say kwa na vow na batini karua.
Wasn't in the original. And vow number 12 is the vow about the nature of man.
Ka vow number 12 okay tukuni kata na tukutuku ni don tamata tambiani.
It was a brand new study that hadn't been spoken about in the movement.
Kaungo endo na study sendo na guli sember ni tukuni kata ki ena na bakubulongo ena noni tostoso.
It has a different property to it than Raffia or Panium or these verses.
Dui na kai tiku kina mai vena mai kina battle of Panem kina battle of Raffia.
That's why that vow was added and we didn't change the vows to add all these other pieces of information.
Ayana huna ka ete kina na vow na batini karua kasenga ni bisotaki be irtale soko ang andreme bisotaki.
So I hope that helps. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness. We ask and pray that you would be with us, guide us and bless us. As we meditate and study upon your word, we ask that you would continue to guide and direct us. And may each of us enjoy our time here at this holy convocation. May we spend the few precious days that we have together, that we might be strengthened and encouraged, that our concerns, our questions would be answered, that our thoughts and ideas, hopes that we have, encouragements that we might give to one another, all of these things may happen here while we're together. Help us, Father, to spend this time pressing together to heal wounds that may exist between brethren, that wrong ideas would be clarified, all with the aim that we would press closer and closer together. We know this is your will. May it be our desire. In Jesus' name, amen.